Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we will take a look at the AMD Radeon R9 390. This 9-year-old card has 8 GB of video memory, and in terms of performance it should be between RX 570 and RX 580 on the AMD side and close to GTX 1060 3GB version from nVidia. I have the Gygabyte version with 2 fans here. As for the video outputs, it has 3 display ports, 1 HDMI and 1 DVI port. For power, it uses one 8-pin and one 6-pin connector. Since this GPU is no longer supported by AMD, the last drivers the system offered me was version 22.6.1 from 2022. Some games, like Hellblade 2, threw an error and wouldn't even start. But ones that did, worked pretty well, as you'll see. Without further ado, let's get started with the benchmark. I tried all games at 1080p resolution, and the first one on the list is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. In the benchmarking tool on minimum details, we got an average of 54 FPS with a minimum of 23. Apex Legends is next, and on all settings set to minimum except textures, which I set to 8 GBs. Even with a lot going on at the same time on the screen, I got an average of 97 FPS. This is a training area, but you have an idea how this graphics card works. In Batman Arkham Knight, I set all graphics options to highest except those reserved for nVidia graphics cards, and got an average of 87 FPS with a maximum of 127 and a minimum of 63 FPS. Black Mesa is a game where you can really see the potential of this graphics card. With all graphics settings set to maximum, I got an average of 190 FPS, but very often I saw it go over 220. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is next. On balanced settings and without using of FSR, we got an average of 66 FPS. It can be said that this is playable enough, but for a single player campaign. For multiplayer, I would still lower the graphics a bit more. I have playing control on the lowest graphical settings, which doesn't look so bad, and I still got over 60 FPS. To be more precise, 65 FPS on average. Crash Insane Trilogy is quite easy to run, and it's no wonder that even this almost 10 years old graphics card can achieve 60 FPS. MSI Afterburner shows 59 FPS on average, which is actually not even possible to notice. In the game with bots in Counter-Strike 2, we got a real high FPS experience. On low graphical details, we got an average of 140 FPS. I don't think it would have been a problem in this game even if we played in 1440p resolution. In Fallout 4, I got an average of 52 FPS on ultra details, with the fact that during exploration it was 60 and it dropped in battles. I would lower the details a bit to get that constant 60 FPS. In order to achieve over 60 FPS in Far Cry 6 with Radeon R9 390, not only did the graphics settings had to be set to medium, but we also had to turn on FSR on quality. This way we got an average of 66 FPS. I tested the finals in training area. With all settings at minimum, we got an average of 76 FPS. Next up is Fortnite. At 1080p resolution, with all settings set to minimum except for view distance, which is set to high, we got an average of 176 FPS. So we have another game where this graphics card shines. Forza Horizon 5 recommended a high preset when first entering the game, but it ended up with FPS in 20s. Instead, I set the graphics to minimum, and the result is a much more acceptable 56 FPS on average. Mafia Definitive Edition is next. With all settings at minimum, the GPU still struggled to maintain 60 FPS. Although dips below 60 are not uncommon, it still provides a playable experience with 63 FPS on average. Here is a game that came out about 2 years before this graphics card, Metro Last Light. At medium graphics details and 1080p resolution, we got an average of 82 FPS. In open spaces, this number is lower, but it never falls below 60 FPS. At this point, I think any of the graphics cards that I've tested can provide a great gaming experience in Mortal Kombat 11, and the results are no different here. At the maximum settings, we got a locked 60 FPS. Need for Speed Unbound is a newer title that gave us trouble with this GPU. With the graphics settings set to low, we got an average of 40 FPS. This number is relatively constant with very few ups and downs, so experience was relatively good. In order to achieve at least somewhat good performance in Outer Worlds, we had to use the upscaler. With the lowest settings and FSR set to quality, we got an average of 59 FPS. Resident Evil 3 Remake is next. On high settings, we got an average of about 75 FPS, but I've seen it go over 100, depending on the environment. Since this is a single player title, I would lock the FPS to 60 and have a great time. The Sleeping Dogs is an older game, but it still looks pretty good. With the Radeon R9 390, we got an average of 83 FPS on high details. I want to add that the GPU temperature you see is after changing the thermal paste. I wonder how high the temperature would be if I haven't done that. I've tested the shadow of the Tomb Raider in the benchmarking tool. With high settings, we got an average of 59 FPS with a minimum of 47. I wouldn't mind playing like this, but you can always reduce the details a bit to achieve 60 FPS all the time. The Witcher Wild Hunt is a demanding game to run, but it is not impossible even on this hardware. Although we had to lower all the settings to low, we still managed to achieve a playable frame rate, 68 FPS on average. The last game for today is xDefiant, which I tested in the practice area. At 1080p resolution and low details, we achieved 122 FPS on average, with very rare dips below 100. That's all from me for today. Tell me, do you think this GPU still has a place in a budget gaming, or is it time for something better? If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!